The rain tapped gently against the window of the small coffee shop, blurring the world outside into streaks of gray. Inside, tucked away in a corner, sat Ethan, a young artist with tired eyes and calloused fingers. His table was scattered with pencil shavings and worn-out sketchbooks, pages filled with dreams that never seemed to pay the bills. A single cup of coffee, already cold, sat untouched beside him. He wasn't here for the drink. He was here for the warmth, both from the heater and the hope that maybe today, inspiration would strike differently. He pulled his sketchbook closer, its edges frayed, the spine barely holding together. From his overstuffed backpack peeked envelopes with bold red stamps, overdue notices for rent, electricity, and more. He tried not to look at them. Instead, he let his pencil dance across the page, sketching what weighed on his heart. In his drawing, a little boy stood in the cold, holding out his last coin to a homeless man sitting on the sidewalk. The boy's face showed innocence, the man's eyes filled with gratitude. Ethan's hand moved with purpose, capturing every detail, every emotion. He glanced around the coffee shop, watching people in warm coats laugh over their drinks, their lives seemingly untouched by struggle. He couldn't help but wonder if anyone believed in art anymore, if it could ever be more than lines on paper. To Ethan, it wasn't just a sketch. It was his heart, his hope, and maybe, just maybe, a message the world needed. As the rain continued to fall, he sighed softly, unaware that this simple sketch would soon set something extraordinary in motion, changing not only his life but the lives of others in ways he never imagined. The rain outside showed no signs of stopping. The soft hum of conversations filled the coffee shop, but Ethan remained lost in his sketch, shading the little boy's hand as it reached out with the coin. His focus was broken by the sudden chime of the doorbell. An elderly woman entered, soaked from head to toe. Her clothes were old and faded, her shoes worn thin. She moved slowly, carrying a small, tattered umbrella that had clearly lost its battle with the wind. Most people barely noticed her presence, but her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Ethan. With a gentle, knowing smile, she approached his table. Ethan looked up, surprised. She leaned over slightly, her gaze fixed on his drawing. "This one," she said softly, pointing at the sketch of the boy and the homeless man, "how much for it?" Ethan blinked, unsure how to answer. He wasn't used to anyone asking about his work, let alone wanting to buy it. "Oh, it's not for sale," he mumbled, his voice hesitant and unsure. But the woman didn't move away. She reached into her faded coat pocket, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and placed it firmly on the table. "For your art," she said kindly, her eyes twinkling. "Art has its own way of paying." Before Ethan could speak, she turned and walked away, her figure slowly disappearing into the rainy streets. Ethan stared at the bill in disbelief, his heart pounding. He hadn't seen that much money in months. He held it in his trembling hands, stunned not just by the generosity, but by the quiet power of her words, words that would soon lead him down a path he never expected. Later that evening, Ethan sat alone in his dimly lit apartment. The sound of the rain outside had softened, but inside, the air was thick with silence. He placed the $100 bill carefully on the small table beside him, staring at it as if it might vanish at any moment. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman's words, "Art has its own way of paying." There was something about her eyes, something beyond the kindness of a stranger. Curiosity pulled him closer. He picked up the bill again, running his fingers along its edges. That's when he saw it, barely visible, almost like a secret meant only for him. In the tiniest handwriting, right along the edge of the bill, were the words, "Pass it on when the time is right." His breath caught in his chest. He read the words again, making sure he wasn't imagining it. Suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't just money. It wasn't just payment for his sketch. It was something more, a message, a responsibility, a quiet test of compassion passed from one hand to another. Ethan sat back in his chair, his heart pounding. He had been worrying about how to stretch this money for rent or food, but now, it felt different. It wasn't just about him anymore. The thought left him both nervous and strangely hopeful. Somewhere deep inside, he knew, this bill wasn't meant to stay with him forever. It was meant to continue its journey, and he would know when the right moment came to let it go. 2 days later, Ethan stood in the grocery store, holding a small basket with only a few essentials: eggs, bread, and instant noodles. Every item he picked, he weighed carefully, still mindful of the little cash he had left. As he waited in line at the checkout, he noticed a young mother ahead of him, her face pale with worry. Her toddler tugged at her sleeve, unaware of the tension in the air. The cashier announced the total, and the woman's hands shook as she fumbled through her worn wallet. She came up short. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she began removing items, first the fruit, then the bread, then finally the carton of milk. Ethan's chest tightened. His fingers brushed against the $100 bill in his pocket, the same bill with the message that had kept him awake the past 2 nights. Pass it on when the time is right. In that instant, he knew. This was the moment. Without a second thought, he stepped forward and quietly handed the cashier the bill. "Please, let her keep everything," he said softly. The woman turned, stunned, her eyes wide with disbelief. Tears filled her eyes as she clutched her groceries tightly. Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan simply smiled, his heart lighter than it had felt in months, and replied, "Art has its own way of paying." She watched him, speechless, as the cashier finished ringing up her groceries. Ethan walked away, leaving her with not just food, but a moment of kindness she would never forget. Weeks later, the rain was long gone, replaced by the warmth of a sunny afternoon. The same little coffee shop now buzzed with life, its windows wide open to let in the summer breeze. Ethan sat at his usual corner table, but this time, things were different. Beside him, a sharply dressed man admired Ethan's sketchbook, flipping through the pages with genuine interest. He was a local gallery owner, known for discovering hidden talents. His eyes lit up when he reached the sketch, the one Ethan had drawn that rainy afternoon. The little boy offering his last coin to the homeless man. "This," the man said, his voice filled with admiration, "this tells a story far beyond the page." Days later, the sketch hung in the gallery's front window, framed carefully with a small title card beneath it that read, "The Art of Money, Inspired by True Kindness." Visitors paused, drawn to the emotional depth of the piece. Some smiled, others wiped away tears. A small box sat nearby for donations, labeled, "Support Local Struggling Artists." To Ethan's surprise, it filled quickly, coins, bills, and notes of encouragement left by strangers moved by the story behind the art. Ethan stood in the corner, watching quietly, his heart full. His sketch, once just a reflection of his struggles, had become a symbol of compassion. As the gallery lights glowed warmly, the narrator's voice closed the story. Sometimes, the true value of money isn't in what it buys, but in how far its kindness travels. And in that moment, Ethan understood, his art had finally paid, not just for him, but for many others too. In the end, the art of money becomes more than just a story about an artist and a mysterious stranger. It becomes a reflection of how simple acts of kindness can create a ripple effect far beyond what we can see. Ethan's journey starts with struggle and doubt, but through one unexpected encounter, he discovers that true wealth isn't measured by money itself, but by the compassion it inspires. The elderly woman's quiet generosity sets off a chain of selfless acts, reminding us that kindness always finds its way back into the world. Ethan's decision to pass on the gift, even in his own difficult circumstances, becomes the turning point not only in his life but in the lives of others who witness his art. By the final scene, we see how a single sketch, a simple drawing born from hardship, touches countless hearts, encouraging people to give, share, and believe in something bigger than themselves.